Hello everybody, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today I'm going to be looking at a masterwork, but the masterwork is going to be black and white photography. This is from Josep, Casals, Ariet. Hopefully that pronunciation is right. This photographer lived from, I believe, 1901 to 1986. But seeing his work is just absolutely amazing. I came across it on a Facebook page, Monocromatic Past and Present, and I screenshotted it and saved it, and now I'm finally getting around to actually looking at it and using it as a watercolor study for tonal values as well as compositional elements. Now, I believe all the works are untitled, but I will say that this painting will be after this artist. I know my Kindle doesn't show up that well in the video, but hopefully you can kind of get an idea. I can bring it closer if need be. It gets that glare. Sorry about that. So I'm going to look at this, and we're going to paint from a monochromatic photograph. And then from there, we are going to do it just in Cotman Burnt Umber, so it'll be a burnt sienna study. I don't think I'm going to wind up adding any other colors to it. This is Stonehenge Aqua. I'm going to fully saturate it with water. I'm going to start out wet and wet. So this is 11 by 15, so that it could be underneath a mat. 11 by 14. It is 100% cotton, and it's 140 pound cold press paper. The binder clips, I use those to stretch out the paper as it absorbs water. We'll play with the Ranson hake brush. We'll use some wiping back and forth, and we'll use some scraping. We'll just have some fun with it. So I decided to use the Cotman Burnt Umber because of the price and the quantity of fresh paint I know I'm going to wind up using. All right, I got my paper towel. The paper is wet. I'm going to dive right into it. And hopefully from this, like I had mentioned, looking at masterworks, looking at these monochromatic paintings, will help develop tonal values, which is a big proponent of painting, just tonality. And hopefully compositional learning will take place, setting things up. I did read once in an art book that if you look at paintings in photographs in magazines and like National Geographic or the newspaper, something along the lines of those photographers, they're obviously professionals doing that, and they are going to have a good knowledge of composition within a photograph. So that book, that artist recommended painting from those periodicals, or looking at them for their tonal value and the placement of everything, and from there kind of making up a different scene but using that underlying aspect. So wet and wet with this one, I'm going to go back and forth, putting in my pigment and lifting it up to develop the tonal values that I want. In these cloud regions, it's much lighter in spots. There are some darker clouds, and I can go back and forth, bring it in, and pulling back up. And I can achieve numerous approaches with this. I can, if I wanted to, I can keep my brush strokes there, or I can kind of dampen out the brush strokes and let things soften up together. So that's where your own approach starts to play in this. I'm already pouring out more burnt umber. And like I said, I went with the Cotman just because of how affordable it is. It's light, fast, and it's good quality. I usually use Da Vinci brand burnt umber, but I just have not gotten around to doing a burnt umber study or comparing the two, to be honest. So I'm building up darker tonal values, working with textures, just getting the main ideas in place. As the paper absorbs the water, it's going to buckle, and the binder clips, if I press down, press with the paper, it'll flatten it out. So a very easy way to stretch watercolor paper while you're painting. Some people will use 300-pound paper, so you don't have to really deal with the buckling. I've used it once or twice, but 300-pound paper is out of my price range. It's usually double the price of 140-pound. And since I'm painting so fast and loose and painting so often, I guess if I was a professional, I would use the 300-pound, but I just can't. I can't justify it at this point financially. I'm putting in some foliage in some locations. I'm going to scrape out some spots. I'm going to take my card. We have a few trees. The trees are like stark white. I'm not sure if I'll be able to pull back to complete whiteness with the scraping. Let me put these trees in there. Now, with photography, and sometimes I talk about art history, but I don't have a degree in art history. I'm certified to teach art, but mainly because I have a certain number of credit hours from taking art classes. And when I got my certification to teach math and physics, having those extra credit hours carried over and allowed me to teach art as well. However, I don't teach an art class. That being said, I'll try to give you my view or what I think about photography and its impact on art. If you look up photography on Wikipedia or any of those type of informational sources, there's a lot of different types of photography that took place, a lot of different techniques that were used. I mentioned that Monochromatic Facebook page where they had a lot of different material, like people post who the artist was, the time period that the artist lived during, and the material or the process method that was used for that piece of art. And there's a lot of stuff dating from the 1850s in that range. So photography really goes far back. And I believe it had a big effect on other art movements. Since photography is like directly representational, or at least in the beginning, it was, you know, picture perfect. Artists in other mediums then started moving away from kind of realism, because realism was attained by photography. At least that's what I believe. And then there were artists that came along that tried to make photography an art in its own right. And as you look through these aspects of art, or the history of art, photography, you'll start seeing compositional elements taking place, different subject matters. They play around with blurring effects. Some even mimic the aspect of the eye, where you'll have a focused object, and everything else in the surrounding area will be blurred out. So looking at photographs, like I had said earlier, from published magazines will help you see compositional ideas, and looking at historical photographs will help you with compositional ideas. I think there's just a lot of benefit in it and studying it. Now, I did say this is, I believe, my first time ever doing a burnt umber study, even though it's, I think it's almost painting 101 that you should be doing burnt umber studies. I just never really got around to doing them. I guess the closest I do is the mixture of the sap green and the Venetian red, and that starts getting different green and red tones along with that brown. And studying the tonal values, the light and dark, is really beneficial to an artist. If you're out on location and you're plein air painting, or if you want to go sketch or watercolor on site, you could readily just go with one pigment, one brush, and a card, and go out and do these type of studies. Some art textbooks will recommend doing a thumbnail sketch or a thumbnail tonal sketch. That's another way you can utilize this to grow your art. One artist recommended, while you're sitting there watch TV, just kind of do random abstract light and darks on a piece of paper, and then eventually one of them will stick out to you as something you can apply to an actual painting. That abstract light and dark, you could start creating it as a scene with maybe a house or a tree, or a tree line or a fence line. I'm eventually going to do a dry off, and we're going to see the burnt umber tonal shift. I'm not familiar with how well or how much of a shift burnt umber takes, but if you wanted to do two colors, you can take burnt umber and either a phthalo blue or ultramarine, and that'll get you some darks. I'm going to grab the rigger. This is the number 4 rigger for some fine lines. I want a lot more pigment. Some of these trees have the light on them, some of them are in darkness. I'm going to use the side of this to help these guys sit in place. I'm going to bring them down. Compositionally, it's interesting how we have the big group, we have the path, so we have an S-shaped composition taking place here. We have a bigger mass and a smaller mass. Dark bushes in the background. This guy sits on kind of an outcrop, so I'm going to darken alongside here, and then we start getting that upward texture, which I can use the hake for the closer grass textures. Gets super dark right in here. We may move to the rigger, the number 1 rigger, just so we have finer lines and more texture. But let's see, let's do a quick dry off and see how things look. So I'm going to pause it and we're going to look for the tonal shift that takes place. Now, honestly, I don't think much of a tonal shift took place, which is really cool, really beneficial to us. I'm going to take the number 1 rigger, kind of just play with a few parts. Seeing that there's not much of a tonal shift, I'm tempted to speculate maybe a Venetian red, sap green, and burnt umber mix for a 3-color palette with the tonal aspects. However, you would push in the red direction and the green direction as well. The red and the green do have the lightening that takes place, the tonal shift, and the addition of burnt umber may help inhibit that. So that is very cool, and frankly, I am somewhat ashamed that I have not done just a burnt umber painting before. And this might be good for people that are tempted to get into watercolor. For example, maybe you're an acrylic painter and you think, okay, maybe I want to try watercolor. Buying a $5 tube of burnt umber and getting a rigger and a hake brush, or a rigger and a mop brush, kind of just a big brush and a small brush. You can experiment and see if you like the attributes of it. Excuse me. While also bearing in mind that if you do like it and you do add more colors, you then run the risk of the tonal shifts and mixing and whatnot, and then you just go on to the learning the other aspects of the medium. And as I had mentioned earlier, on-site studies, if you're out in the field, having just 1 tube of paint, or maybe 2 paints that mix to a neutral or a brown, and a big brush and a rigger and a card, a source of water, that's all you would really need. I know a lot of people are dealing with the cold weather right now. In fact, in Louisiana, today it's in the 40s, and I'll probably get down to the 30s tonight, which is cold for us. You know, I know some areas will get a lot colder, so I know people are dealing with not being able to really paint outdoors due to the cold. But you can do this from a photograph, so when you're driving around and safely taking photographs, you don't want to take a photo while you're driving. You can do initial studies like this. So as I wrap this painting up, I would like for you, to consider liking and subscribing. Down below, I do have links to my Etsy account and my Patreon account if you want to support the channel. Simply liking and subscribing is more than enough in regards to supporting this channel. If there's anything you would like to see, questions, comments, concerns, let me know. If you don't like the video, rather than just thumbing it down, politely let me know what you would like to see. What am I doing that is not to your liking? And what can I do to address your art tutorial needs? If there's ever any paintings that you like and I don't have it up on Etsy, you can contact me and let me know if you would like to purchase a painting. Oh yeah, and also if you ever follow along with any of these tutorials, you have my express permission to sell anything that you paint from these tutorials. I want you to sign your name on it, and I want you guys to be able to make money off of this to help you buy art supplies and to help you get your name out there and to progress and have fun. On that note, I'm going to pause for one last dry off. We'll put a mat over it and we'll see how it looks.